furtherance of the fight against corruption, President Tinubu slashes travel expenditure by 60%. Are you excited by this? Let us know on Twitter at News Central TV. I am Olive Emodio. Welcome to Breakfast Central.
And I am Usaugi Ogbawan. Yes, of course, and the conversations continue this morning on the fight against corruption and the suspension of the Humanitarian Affairs Minister, amongst other things that, of course, have developed after the events of the last 48 hours. We'll bring you updates on that story, amongst, of course, other things this morning. Thank you very much for joining us. We also have Dashan Usman sharing with us breakfast headlines this morning. Good morning, Dashan.
Good morning, Elsa. How are you doing?
I am fantastic this morning. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Olive, hi. How are you doing?
Very well, Dashan. Good to see you. Are you excited by all the news that's making the rounds on social media in the fight against corruption?
Of course, talking about corruption, but a lot of people are actually asking if it is an indictment, on the administration of the president, because it's not been a year yet that these people were, elected into power, even appointed, and we're already beginning to see scandals upon scandals, not from the past administration, not only from the past administration, but, from the present administration itself.
Well, it might be an indictment with regards to the quality of persons that, have been put in office, but I think it's also an indictment on previous administration and on Nigeria as a whole, with the systems, because what it's showing is the way that things have been done, in the past, and probably are still being done in different ministries, departments, and agencies across the country. And that has been my argument, that this one that we're talking about, we're only talking about it because the document leaked. There's a lot of documents that haven't leaked. There's a lot of these things that are still happening. Contracts are still being awarded to people that didn't bid. Just, loads of things happening, everywhere. So it's really just exposing the way that things have been done for the longest time. But
my fear with that exposure is, if anything meaningful will come out of it. Yes, we've seen Betta Edu being suspended. Many argue that she should have resigned before it even got to the level of her being suspended, so to avoid further embarrassment. But typically what we see is the reason why this can keep happening over and over again is because there's a culture of impunity. People feel that they can easily get away with things. They feel that the Nigerian audience has a very short attention span. We easily move on from conversations, and after a while, we move on to the next trending issue and we forget about what happened. Not a lot of people have been made to bear the repercussion of their actions. We've not seen a lot of high-profile convictions. The moment we start seeing them, then we'll see a great reduction in the level of cases like this one. Until then, we might wait a very long while.
Well, we'll see. We'll just, have to wait a while and see, what goes on or what happens after this. Another thing that actually made the headlines that a lot of people are talking about, has to do with the, just cost of governance. Yes, 60%, the slash in, travel expenditure. It's quite a huge one, both internationally and, domestically. You remember what happened when, so many people, a lot of entourage actually followed the president to Dubai for the COP28.
Climate tourism.
Yeah, exactly. And then we're seeing this happen. It's a step in the right direction, but more needs to be done when it comes to, cutting the cost of governance.
Yeah. And I'm sorry that I always sound this way, but
I was waiting for your reaction.
These things don't really mean much, and for two reasons. First of all, Buhari's administration did the same thing. They cut down, these same expenses by, I don't know how many people, maybe it was 60%. They did it, I think in his 10 years. I remember I saw those stories in the newspapers multiple times. So it's nothing new. They've done these things before, it doesn't change anything. And here's the second thing. If you cut down the cost of, travel expenses and travel allowances for government, and all of that, and you're still spending billions of naira to build residential buildings for vice president, you still have, if you look at the list of the announcement, I think it even showed First Lady, and her travel and tour had been cut down also. There's nothing like the First Lady's office in the first place. But let's move away from that. You can't cut down travel expenses and travel allowances and then spend billions of naira building residences, buying SUVs for lawmakers, taking 1,400 people to conferences. Of course, that one might come to an end. And then spending 400 billion or hundreds of billions of naira on conditional cash transfers. You are wasting money in a million more ways.
Baby steps. Baby steps. In my opinion,
I'm just not impressed.
In cutting the cost of governance, it's not something that happens overnight. It's a gradual process. So today they're cutting travel expenditure Tomorrow, they would ensure that when they present in another budget, they're not, maybe for the next assembly, they're not buying cars for all of them, expensive or exorbitant cars for all of them. I think it's baby steps. It's steps in the right direction, right? But my own issue would be, let it not just be a headline. Let's actually get to see, because we're not really fazed by a lot of the headlines we see in the newspapers, because some of them just end up as headlines, right? In the last administration, President Muhammadu Buhari used to give orders and say, end insecurity now, or this will happen, and all that was just headlines. So we want to actually see it being implemented. Let there be an actual court.
Exactly.
You see when the state government is moving, when commissioners are moving around, do you see their entourage moving?
Yeah, but for me, Olive, I actually feel, 20 convoys for the president is still a lot.
20 persons.
20 persons, not convoys. So this is international travel, right?
And then local travel is, 25 persons for the president. How much does it cost? How many international trips does the president take every year? And how much would it routinely cost the president or cost the nation, for the president to travel? And then compare that with spending 30 billion naira to renovate the National Assembly complex. It's not just adding up in my books. And I think all these things are really just done, to make up on a pig. It's not in any way going to. The real things that are robbing Nigeria of its money and of its commonwealth have not been tackled. And cutting down the cost of travel or allowances or the number of people who follow the president for travel, for me, it's totally irrelevant.
And
Again,
I can totally,
the Buhari administration did it.
I can totally see where you're coming from. But what I would say in conclusion is it took us years. The level of corruption that we have got into, the corruption has become very ingrained, and the level of radical spending that we're used to has become ingrained in our governance. So it's not something that will change overnight. It's gradual steps. So I applaud the Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration for doing this, and we hope to see more of these in the coming weeks. But we'll talk more in detail. That's one of our top stories today. Dashin will see you with breakfast headlines, but let's first share what our top stories are.
All right, this morning, President Tinubu slashes travel expenditure.
And a consultancy fee, Interior Minister summoned. This is, of course, following the updates regarding the Beta Edu saga. That's not a nice headline. Also
this morning, shackles of corruption and the way forward. These are some of the things, of course, that are making conversations across Nigeria.
And another question people are asking is APC losing its honor of integrity? Was it there also in the first place?
Newspaper front pages will also be coming your way this morning. The latest stories making headlines across Nigeria this Wednesday morning. But first of all, breakfast headlines with Dashin Usman.
I love to make a difference as a journalist because when you speak to the situation or the people affected, that's when you get the full story.
And so we go all out. The protest was ongoing and it was peaceful across the plains for real-time stories.
And it was the longest bridge until the 6th of October bridge was completed in Cairo, Egypt.
Ni Omoni. This is News Central.
Hello and welcome to Breakfast Headlines on News Central TV. I'm Dashin Usman. Now we'll begin the news in West Africa, where President Tinubu has slashed travel expenditure of all Nigerian government officials, both domestic and international, by 60%. Presidential spokesman Ajuri Ngelale, who disclosed this on Tuesday, said the directive was issued as a cost-cutting measure on official travels and will also affect the offices of the President, Vice President, First Lady, and ministers. Let's also tell you that President Bola Tinubu summoned the Minister of Interior, Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo, to the presidential villa. This is coming in the wake of his link to the alleged fraud involving the suspended Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Betta Edu. Now, according to reports, the Edu-led ministry awarded a consultancy contract to the tune of 438 million naira for the National Social Register to New Planet Projects Limited, a company allegedly owned by Tunji-Ojo. Meanwhile, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission has interrogated chief executive officers and managing directors of Zenith Bank, Providence Bank and Jaiz Bank in connection with the 44 billion naira fraud allegedly uncovered in the Nigeria's Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. Betta Edu, who was on Monday suspended by President Bola Tinubu as Minister of Humanitarian Affairs over 585 million naira cash transfer scandal, had earlier been invited for questioning by the EFCC. Also, Halima Shehu, the embattled coordinator and chief executive officer of the National Social Investment Program Agency, domiciled under the Edu-led ministry, is being probed by the EFCC over an alleged 44 billion naira fraud. Now to election matters, Nigeria's Independent National Electoral Commission in Kano says it has completed necessary arrangements for the conduct of the by-election of Kunchi, Anyawa, Kura, Garamalam and Rimangado Tofa State Local Assembly by-elections slated for the 3rd of February. Now, the resident electoral commissioner in the state, Abdu Zango, said the commission has deployed sensitive and non-sensitive materials to all affected local government areas, adding that Beaver's machines would be used during the rerun elections to ensure free, fair and credible elections. Now to health issues. In Central Africa, Cameroon's Minister of Public Health, Manuada Malachi, says the country will introduce a Mosquirix RTS malaria vaccine on January 22. Now, he said the move is part of concerted efforts to enhance the fight against malaria and reduce morbidity and mortality associated with the disease. We now head to East Africa, where with just under a week to go before presidential election in Comoros, candidate Mohamedou Ahamada says it is time for President Azali Assoumani to stand aside. Ahamada said his candidature is about national peace and stability, adding that Comoros deserves better. Still in the region, since Sudan's war spread to Al Jazeera state south of Khartoum, farmers have watched their livelihoods wither away after fighting between paramilitary forces battling the army wreaked havoc on once bountiful lands. Now, farmers who are part of the Jazeera agricultural scheme, an important irrigation project that is a key source of food for the country, says their crops need water and fertilizer that the area can no longer provide. In Ethiopia, authorities have held talks with Somaliland and military cooperation just a week after a deal with the breakaway Somali region on sea access stoked tensions in the Horn of Africa. Now, the discussions in Addis Ababa were held the same day Somalia's President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud began a visit to neighboring Eritrea. In South Africa, political analysts say ANC is between a hard rock as they are scared of taking a hard stance on the Zuma political situation, as it could lead to further divisions in the ANC and perhaps sporadic protests. Now, this comes after remarks made by ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula at an ANC cadre meeting over the weekend that Zuma had not been expelled by the ANC but had expelled himself. Mbalula said the ANC will not take Zuma through disciplinary processes because he was gone already. And that's all at this time on Breakfast Headlines. Now it's back to Osaoge and Osaoge, hi.
Yeah,
Very
always
well.
here.
Thanks a lot, Dasha,
Olive.
for those stories. I wanted to just quickly chip in on the summoning of Bumi Ojo by the president over the 438 million naira scandal or whatnot. And once again, remind everyone that the president doesn't need to get himself involved in these things. And that's why, of course, we should run a system and a democracy with which there's independent agencies that are responsible for checkmating government high-handedness every now and then. The president doesn't need to get involved. He doesn't need to be summoning anybody. He doesn't need to give orders before the EFCC or any anti-graft agency gets to work. And unfortunately, this is where we still are. And that's why I personally don't see any of the things that they're doing and take them seriously, because we still are running government like we are in 1982. Nobody needs to be summoned. If you have questions to answer with any of the anti-graft agencies, if you have questions to answer with the Bureau of, can't remember the name now. I can't remember the name of the bureau. You should answer those questions, and nobody needs to summon you. You don't need to go and dobale for anybody or beg anybody. But anyway, that's what it is.
I mean, what makes me sad is because a number of us had recently just started speaking really highly of Tunji Ojo. We tweeted that if you were to analyze ministers, he'll be one of the top performing ministers from this administration.
Yeah, Olive.
Yes, so we're very excited about what he's doing with the airports, with the passports, the passport collation, the digitization of the passport application and collation, to cut off all those unnecessary bureaucracy that we see at the immigration office, as well as the unnecessary bribe that a number of people had to pay to be able to get their Nigerian passport.
Well,
and we cannot take away from that.
Speaking on that, a lot of people seem to think that, you know, him trying to rehabilitate the whole passport and, you know, being a working, you know, minister seems to have, you know, touched on a few nerves, and probably this is the reason why this is happening to him. And, you know, it looks like a lot of Nigerians actually come into his defense, you know, despite the allegation.
Well, we're not surprised if it touches a few nerves, but what is wrong as well.
Definitely.
Whilst being a serving minister, you cannot benefit from the same government while serving. So any company that you're a shareholder in cannot bid for contracts whilst you're still a serving minister. You cannot bid for contracts from the country, because it's basically conflict of interest. So what is wrong, regardless of the fact that he worked and he's still working. But what is wrong, and that's something we'll discuss much later. Yep. Thank you very much, Dashin, for bringing us breakfast headlines. See you at 9 a.m.
All right. Interesting start to the day, of course, Wednesday morning on Breakfast Central. Remember, you can always be a part of the conversation. Simply join us via our social media platforms at News Central TV. Let us know your thoughts. You know, if you're taking sides with Tunji Ojo this morning, and you think that, of course, you know, the president should be lenient. I don't even know if that makes sense, but if you think that, you know,
you should temper justice with mercy. You should have mercy, sir. I'm very sorry.
Let us know what you think, all right? And of course, you know, in other conversations we might be having this morning. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we continue this morning on Breakfast Central.
Africa needs its own storytellers, people who understand the continent because they're from it. People who know that news is more than just a conversation starter, it's our stories. Because these stories run deeper than headlines and segments. It's about digging deeper to get the facts and telling the human side of every single story, not just the echoes from foreign headlines and perspectives. It's time to take back our narratives and share them in our voices. The birth of Africa's New Age reporting, and this is where it begins, right here at News Central TV, with stories that put Africa first.
continent, engaging in analytical reports. Resident doctors in Nigeria commenced a 5-day warning strike. Queues have hit the major cities in Nigeria, bringing you authentic stories as they happen. I am Adeshawa Olushoga. This is News Central.
News Central ní ẹ̀ ń wò.
Welcome to Breakfast Central. Now let's begin our top stories with infrastructure matters. The iconic third Mainland Bridge in Lagos has now been strategically closed to traffic and will remain so between 3 to 4 months. The bridge, which is the major of 3 that connects commuters heading from the mainland to the island and vice versa, will be undergoing major rehabilitation work during this period. News Central's Bernard Akede witnessed the closure and filed in this report.
In November 2023, a portion of the bridge was closed to traffic for some repairs, but was later reopened on December 21st to ease traffic during the Yuletide period. This time, it's the main thing. Both sides of the bridge will be strategically closed at certain times of the day for major rehabilitation work. At about 12:40 p.m., an entourage of officials arrived at the Iyanaworo axis of the bridge to commence the official closure and give the needed information. The entourage then proceeded on a more than 1 kilometer walk to the junction just before the third Mainland Bridge, where the traffic from Ogudu splits up to those going to Oshodi-Apapa Expressway and those going to the island via the third Mainland Bridge. And there, they addressed the media.
The scope of works includes the milling of the existing asphalt. All the existing asphalt you're looking at, from that point of diversion, we will mill them off. Everything, and then we'll replace the defective expansion joints that have been identified. Some expansion joints have been identified as being defective. We're going to remove them and then we'll replace them.
We have well over 250 men from LASMA. Even the GM LASMA is there present. The whole idea is to ensure that, yes, there will be some bit of discomfort, like Mrs. Keisha said, but we'll ensure that we'll make it as less stressful as possible.
The repair work that will be done on the bridge is supposed to last between 5 and 15 years if properly maintained, before thinking of another major rehabilitation.
Motorists will no longer have access here until 12 a.m. in the night. So when we block it now, traffic will be diverted to Bagada. So they can use Bagada, Antony, and Ikorodu Road, Western Avenue, Kata or Iko Bridge to the island. And tomorrow, by 12 p.m. noon, we'll be doing the same thing, blocking this place. It means that people who are going to the island will no longer be able to use this going forward by after 12 noon for the next 6, 7, 8 weeks.
The Lagos State Commissioner of Police was also around to assure Lagos road users that the police will ensure utmost security and maintain law and order during this uncomfortable period, but they will require the full cooperation and support of commuters.
Our men will be here to control traffic, also not only to control manage traffic, but to ensure that no form of robbery or attack to motorists. We are going to secure the road effectively because we know there will be long stretch of traffic.
The Commissioner of Police has already told us the kind of collaboration we're going to put in place. There's going to be 24 hours observatory. There's going to be enforcement. There's going to be guide for motorists. We want just to enjoin motorists to please be patient and obey every traffic rule and the traffic managers on the road.
And so commences the first 6 to 8 weeks of rehabilitation work on the third mainland bridge, starting from this axis, Yanaworo-Bega axis, up all the way down to the end of the bridge into the island. And then after not more than 8 weeks, the work transfers to the other side of the bridge. That's the side coming from the island down to the mainland. It definitely is going to be a 4 months period of discomfort and inconvenience for users of this axis of Lagos. But the hope and the prayer of all Lagosians using this route is that after rehabilitation work is concluded, the bridge will be a lot better and commuters will be happier using this bridge. From Lagos for News Central, I am Bernard Akede.
And thanks to Bernard Akede for that very interesting report there. Yes, Lagosians might, struggle a little bit with the closure of the bridge, but it's for the best. There have been multiple complaints about the viability of the bridge lately. And of course, I'm sure the Lagos State government needed to act to save lives in the future. So yeah, best of luck to Lagosians. There's other options that are available for commuting between the island and the mainland and back. Now, away from the third mainland bridge, Nigeria's fight against corruption has been a campaign talking point for decades. It's been a promise one president after the other has made, but of course, as the Nigerian people have seen, it's all talk and zero action. It's a cancer that is so deep, even the best hospitals in Germany or the most powerful pastors who wave their hands and people fall can heal Nigeria from this cancer. Every year, the nation's corruption index remains the same or gets even worse, as at 2022, Nigeria was ranked 150 out of 180 on the corruption index. Shameful. And this is after years of a government that came into office claiming fighting corruption as one of its biggest goals, if you remember, in 2014. Yet, the pervasive grip of corruption in Nigeria is like a relentless storm. It leaves no sector untouched and, of course, continues to travel across all aspects of government, casting a shadow over the nation's potential for progress. It is a venomous serpent which is coiled around the heart of the nation, poisoning trust and hindering the aspirations of its people. They eventually suffer the most. The latest suspension of the Ministry of, at the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs is only like blowing hot air into lava. It's not going to change anything. Betta Edu and her case is only one out of thousands of similar cases that happen every day in Nigeria. From inflated contract figures, contract being awarded to friends and family members, lecturers getting bribed for marks in university, romantic partners getting contracts with freshly registered companies, or even policemen on the streets seeking bribes. It's everywhere. Like I said, it's like a cancer. Now take a second to imagine all the ministries, departments, and agencies across Nigeria, and imagine how many times government funds have been paid into personal accounts. Oh, you think this is the first time? It's not. It's definitely not. And here's why. The only reason we found out about this one is because a document leaked. Now imagine how many times it's happened without any documents leaking across the country. Think of the number of times and the billions that have been budgeted for different ministries every year, and you wonder why they still don't seem to make any changes in our realities as Nigerians, even after hundreds of billions of naira have been spent. Think about the Niger Delta and the NDDC. Think of the police, healthcare, customs, NNPC. Every year, hundreds of billions of naira put into these agencies and these ministries, and yet we see almost no change or no difference in the quality of life of the average Nigerian. It's important to add also, and this is a very painful part, that there's many Nigerians who actually don't have any issue with corruption. They love it. In fact, it makes life easier for them. It makes it easier to break the law and get away with it. And that's one thing that they always would, subtly talk about. It makes it easier to even arrest a customer who complains about your product online. We've seen that happen many times. It's because of the corruption. And there's many Nigerians, unfortunately, that don't have a problem with it. The fact is, the average Nigerian in a position of power is seeking ways to make extra for his pockets. And when you have a government in office that the people say came in through seemingly corrupt means, it gives zero incentive for the average person to shy away from stealing. And the government of today, if you remember, even campaigned by saying Emilokon, meaning it's my turn. Trust me, nobody across Nigeria interpreted that as my turn to fix Nigeria. It simply just said it's my turn. My turn to do what? So yes, it will continue. from the heads of department to secretaries of the, in different departments and agencies, to the head of finance, the head of procurement, the auditors. Everyone is looking for ways to enrich themselves, but it's mostly because the rot from the top doesn't seem to be different. Barking orders doesn't fight corruption. A start to fighting corruption, many have said, is an election that is seen by all to be free and fair. And then is by government in power taking steps that show that they are totally anti-corruption and anti-waste. In Nigeria today, budgeting billions for SUVs or a yacht or even for the official residences of government officials isn't in any way going to convince anyone to not steal money. I'll end by saying that yes, the administration is still young, but it's not too early to say that we currently don't really expect anything different this time in the fight against corruption. If we're honest with ourselves, we're not really ready to stamp out corruption. And that's it. Over to you, Olive.
Well, there's nothing more that could be added there. Let's take a look at a clip of Ajuri Ngelale for starters, and then we'll come back more to talk about the expenditure. But very, very well said, Asagi. Well done.
His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has, by his most recent directive, approved a massive cost-cutting exercise that will cut across the entire federal government of Nigeria and the offices of the President himself, the Vice President, and the office of the First Lady. It will be conducted in the following fashion. 1, the official trips that will be undertaken within the country, that is, when Mr. President or the Vice President travels to any state within the country, the massive bills that accrued due to allowances and ESTA code for security detail coming from Abuja, going and traveling into those states, will be massively cut due to the directive of the President that the security outfits within states, whether it be police, DSS, or branches of the military, will frontline his protective detail when he travels to those states. Additionally, when any international travel is being approved, the following limits have been placed on all ministers of the Federation. 4 members of their staff, appointees and the like, will be allowed to travel with a minister on an official trip. For heads of agency, that will be limited to 2 members of staff allowed to travel on an official trip. Furthermore, the numbers that the President has now approved for official travel with him that will apply to his principal staff are as follows. On international trips, the President has directed that no more than 20 individuals be allowed to travel with him. That number will be cut down to 5 in the case of the First Lady. 20 for the President, 5 for the First Lady. Additionally, the number in the entourage on official international trips for the Vice President will be cut to 5. The number that will be limited, the number that will be placed as a limit on the wife of the Vice President is also 5. In terms of local trips, the President has approved a new limit of 25 members of staff to accompany him on domestic trips within the country. The office of the First Lady is now limited to 10 staff members to accompany her on official trips within the country. The Vice President will be limited to 15 members of staff on official trips within the country, while his wife will be limited to 10 members of staff on official trips within the country.
Well, there we have it. Ajuri Ngelale breaking down the travel expenditure. Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu is reshaping government spending by cutting the official travel numbers and the travel cost by 60%. International trips are now capped at 20 individuals for the president, like you just saw, 5 for the vice president, and 5 for the first lady. Domestically, the limits are 25 for the president, 15 for the vice president, and 10 for the first lady. Now, we were talking about this earlier on, and you didn't seem very impressed by this. Now, my perspective when it comes to this would be that when we're cutting down this cost, it's also in reaction to Nigeria's cries for the cutting of the cost of governance. We're a country that has a very, very robust expenditure. We have a robust expenditure when it comes to governance. We spend so much with the National Assembly. We don't even know how much those members of the National Assembly and these ministers earn. Is why for the longest time they have been clamoring for hashtag Open National Assembly. We need to know exactly what, how much we're spending there. So there are a lot of things that are shrouded in secrecy. And I would say that cutting these travel expenses is a step in the right direction. The amount of, or the culture of overspending that we've built is not something that can be changed overnight. It's in one decision, one day at a time. So I want to applaud the administration, the current administration, for cutting these expenses, and I look forward to seeing them doing more. Doing more would include ensuring that we're not doing random appointments, because every other day there's one SA, SSA, PSA, and all the other appointments. So, not having more, and in the next, maybe in the next year or so, cutting down on the number of people that we have running office, or we have in the cabinets.
So those are your expectations, and like I said, I'm personally not expecting anything, like in that direction, and at the same time, I'm not impressed, mostly because once again, we have the largest cabinet we've ever had. I'm sure that they must have thought about those things when, they were putting all these people and adding those names. Every 2 days, add another 3 names, to your cabinet. They weren't thinking about cutting the cost of governance then. And also, I don't know that the Constitution recognizes the office of the First Lady. I don't know that.
No, it doesn't.
So why are we having a budget for the office of the First Lady? Why are we having a number of people that are allowed to travel with the First Lady? Why do we have the office of the First Lady in the first place? I don't know that the Constitution recognizes that. So how are you cutting down the cost of governance when you are also creating budget or creating allocation for the First Lady, and that is the wife of the president that wasn't voted into office?
That should be covered by the president's expenses.
So yes, that's why for me, these are only just, it sounds more like propaganda. It's propaganda to, sell the narrative that the government is seemingly trying to do better with regards to expenses. But, you can't do that and at the same time budget billions of naira for renovation of buildings of the vice president and of the official residence of the president in Lagos and some other things like that. You're budgeting billions of naira to buy cars for the First Lady and for National Assembly members. It's just not adding up, because if we're serious, the reason behind the whole idea of cutting down cost of government, because we realize that with the current reality of Nigeria's economy, we can't afford to continue to just spend money recklessly. So you can't do billions of naira in this direction, another billions of naira here, and then say, oh, we're reducing the people traveling with the president to 20. It's not adding up, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to convince anybody that you're cutting down the cost of governance, and that's my point. Plus, are we cutting down further from what the Buhari administration cut down? Because the Buhari administration did cut down its own cost of governance and cut down the number of people traveling with the president and ESTA code and whatnot, back then when he was in office in 2019. So is it a further reduction from that one, or that one was false? And, they're now deciding to go ahead and do it.
I'm trying to remember the country that's completely even said no traveling.
I think Malawi.
Yes,
the
said
Malawian
no traveling.
President, yes.
The country that cannot afford to sponsor that.
I remember that they made promises in the Buhari administration, the same APC government, that they were going to, sell off some of the presidential jets. That never happened. And so it would take more than this to convince the average Nigerian that you are truly cutting down the cost of governance. We've seen the way that National Assembly members move. We've seen the way that the Senate President moves with a large entourage. We've seen all these things play out. We've seen them continue to budget billions for some very, very frivolous items for themselves. And so no, I don't think anybody is convinced that you truly are trying to cut down the cost of governance by these things. But yes, like you said, do this one, maybe next year you reduce the number of people in office, and all of that.
No, but next year is too far, before the end of the year. Let's hope that, at least let there not be any further appointments. Let's not see more SSAs and SAs being appointed for starters. Because that's all we saw for the most part of last year. Every week, every other day, there was a new appointment. There were new assistants and SAs that were being announced. So for starters, we don't want to see any more SAs.
Yeah.
It's okay, the ones they have is enough.
Also go ahead and then ban health tourism for government officials. Let's do everything. Since we're being serious, if we're being serious about being better, let's go ahead and ban that.
I don't see that happening.
Oh, okay.
Because we don't even have...
We're going to do health tourism.
Before they will ban health tourism, they ought to have, first of all, invested in Nigeria, to invest in Nigeria's healthcare, so that everyone can, these people can be assured of the very, the quality of healthcare that they're joining, the kind of healthcare that they're receiving here in Nigeria. So they can't even guarantee the quality of healthcare. How do you then ask them not to travel? That one is not going to happen. I think another area we need to look at when we're cutting the cost of governance is to actually appeal to those whose responsibility it is to look through the budgets, to ensure that they do their due diligence. If we've learned nothing, at least in this last administration, with Funsho Doherty standing as a strong opposition and pointing out the flaw. I mean, we've always known that budgets are padded and they usually just do copy and paste and don't actually review. We would like for the Houses of Assembly to actually look through every item on the budget and ensure that everything there is actually needed and not just some random thing put there with some random figure. Because those monies will be paid, but then it's just paid for what? Waste of money.
Maybe not all of it is paid. There's, I don't know that we do enough of a review of budget implementation every year. But yes, there are repeated items, that continue to repeat themselves in every budget cycle that maybe, need to be taken a closer look at. There's also certain items that aren't very necessary. At this time, we cannot afford it as a nation. And so, take out some of all those things. But yes, I agree with you on all of that. But again, I don't know that it's a welcome idea, but I don't know that it is very convincing. And at the same time, I would like to also remind you, just like we said yesterday, that Nigerian people would love to see improvement in security. As you cut down your cost on governance, good for you and good for, the office, but we would like to see an improvement in security. We would like to see that the people in the Federal Capital Territory do not fear kidnappers.
And not just Federal Capital Territory. I mean, I've been seeing multiple reports that I cannot confirm, but multiple reports about people seeing bodies. I don't know if you've seen that on the road, around Ogun axis. That's not something that we can confirm, but we hope that law enforcement agents can look into it and give us further report. But we want to be able to travel via road and feel safe and secure, knowing that you will get to your destination and one bandit is not going to hijack your vehicle and ask your family for money. Let's move away from that to talk about something else. President Bola Tinubu has summoned the Minister of Interior, Mr. Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo, to the presidential villa following allegations of a 438 million naira consultancy contract awarded by the embattled Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Dr. Betta Edu, who is now suspended. The contract meant for the National Social Register to aid fund disbursement to the vulnerable was allegedly granted to New Planet Projects Limited, a company with ties to Tunji-Ojo. Edu faces suspension for diverting 585 million naira meant for grants is under investigation for channeling the funds into a private account. Now, just to reiterate that Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo had come highly praised in the past few weeks because of the impact that he's had, with the passports, with the influence that he's had with regarding making the passport process easier, passport application and collection process easier, and the refurbishing we're seeing happening with Nigeria immigration. But unfortunately, this then adds a stain to his record. And this is, of course, for people who would argue. I mean, there have been several arguments, some for him, some against him. And so those for him would say that, at least he's working, it could have been a mistake. He stepped down. He's come out to say that he stepped down as at 2019. So he stepped down as a director, I believe, of the company. But what we will say is that there is conflict of interest. So long as you are one of the shareholders in that company, the company should not be benefiting from the federal government, from any government contract, because what that looks like is you are being paid twice. There's conflict of interest there. So I don't know how that will work out well for him. We've heard of close meetings he's had with the president, And I'm sure that more investigation will be done. And we'll talk about this much later. We'll be joined by a political analyst who will delve deeper into this and give us further insight.
Yeah, and you know, my views still stand. Yes, he said that he stepped down in 2019 when he got into National Assembly. And of course, his wife still remained a director in the company. It's been a company, he said, has been in existence for 15 years. He stepped down and then, of course, became a shareholder. But like you said, you know, according to the Code of Conduct Bureau, there's still, of course, conflict of interest. And the company has no business bidding for federal government contract, you know, while he is there. And as long as you're a shareholder, you will still be benefiting from it.
And not just even him being a shareholder, his wife is a director.
His wife is a director, exactly. You know, so there's some conflict of interest that, you know, I feel like he may have gotten wrong. But again, these things, you know, are as clear as daylight. My challenge here is the news report, you know, that he has been summoned by the president. And it basically tells the kind of system that we still run, that agencies of government almost do not function without the president giving a go-ahead. Or, you know, they maybe, you know, would ignore certain issues because the president has told them to ignore it, which is dangerous for our democracy and dangerous for the institutions and the strength of our institutions. And that is why, if you remember, you know, days after the Beta Edu scandal occurred, I think it was yesterday or the day before, she went to Aso Villa.
Well, in all fairness, she had been trying to go to us to see the president since the 2nd of January, according to reports.
Okay. But it still, you know, was her going to the president. I mean,
to explain herself.
To explain herself. And that's what it looked like. Whether she was going to say for a different reason or not, nobody knows. But it seemed like, you know, now there's chaos, so let me run to the president and go on, the person who appointed me, and go and figure out ways that I can get myself out of this problem, which shouldn't be. The president also shouldn't be summoning Tunde Ojo. You have no business with him. You've appointed him. If he has erred, you know, by his, the Code of Conduct Bureau, by the you know, anti-graft agencies, they should handle it, and that's why they've been set up. It has no. The president shouldn't be the one to give a go-ahead whether they should handle it or not. And if you are going there to go and explain yourself, it doesn't stop the anti-graft agencies from doing their work, and that's the challenge that I feel that we have, you know, with the separation of powers, and this whole conversation. You don't be frolicking with, you know, a person who has been accused of corruption. It's almost the same thing with when Babachir Lawal had his issue with the grass cutting scandal, you know, and then, of course, you know, he was still claiming that he was still the Secretary of the Government of the Federation, and I was asking who is the president. Because of this relationship, because they feel that because they have this close relationship with the president, then, you know, they're untouchable, which is not a good look. We have Ezekiel Nyaitok, who's joining us from the nation's capital, Abuja, where all the action is taking place. Good morning, Mr. Nyaitok. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, sir. Just last night I left Abuja for Uyo, so I'm still current with the effects of Abuja.
I guess the FCT was getting too hot.
More settled and comfortable in a more peaceful environment.
Okay. Tell us what's going on, all right, in the FCT. Before you left, did you meet with any of these persons who are embroiled in scandals? And what are your thoughts, basically, on the Minister for Interior, Tunde Ojo, and the challenges he's having with the Code of Conduct Bureau, as it seems?
Okay, there are two things. The very first is I want to briefly touch on your earlier topic, if it's okay by you, the issue of the president cutting down on cost. I want our government not to be cosmetic, but to be real. And if you look at the cost, like what is in the budget, you know, the travel stuff is about, I think it's neighborhood of about 16 billion or thereabout. And even if you take off 60%, it comes down to nothing. We know where the cost in governance is. If you want to cut cost, you know, it's a good step. Don't get me wrong. It's a good step. But call people like us to come and tell you the Orasian report where you should cut cost of governance, where we have bloated, where our money is going into. Let's do a synthesis of the budget and we can tell you. But one thing is sure, it's a very good first step. Now, coming down to what is happening in Abuja, it's more like 1 day, 3 troubles. You know, it's supposed to be 1 week, 1 trouble, but it's like 1 day, 3 troubles. But I also like what is happening. And I want Nigerians to know that there is a shaking that is beginning. You know, there's something there's a sound of the going on the tops of the mulberry trees. There's something that is happening, and it's account of the prayers that Nigerians have been praying, okay? Now, with that of the Interior Minister, I happen to have, I wouldn't say a direct relationship with him, but there's a level you reach in this country and you have access, general access. And this guy, in 2019, says he had sent in a letter, all the documentations where he withdrew himself from the involved company, and he brought certified true copies. Now, what happens is that usually we don't know how things are going to move into, so he sent documentation to the Corporate Affairs Commission, and they don't do a regular update. They ought to have the ICT platform where updates are regular. And then you can't have something that was done in 2019 not being reflected in 2024. That's about 5 years span. If that issue was reflected and he was no longer seen as one of the people in the company, one of the interests, then maybe the direct correlation between him and this company and the bribe, not bribe, please, and the scandal, that's what it is right now. It wouldn't be the way it is. But if it had not been the way it is, it probably would not even generate the interest it is. But I think that, like the Bible says, all things work together for good. A lot of things are going to just keep happening just to escalate certain things. And Betta Edu happens to be somebody I wouldn't directly call a friend, but somebody I've had some level of sympathy for a while. And she happens to have gotten herself, and it's good it happened to her. Are you aware that the humanitarian minister, the former humanitarian minister, the 44 billion was talked about, which is about less than 2%, about 1.5% of the 500 and something billion, because 500 is just half of a billion. And then you talk of 44 billion and half a billion effectively. So how come that of Betta Edu came up and became so sensational is because of the persons involved. So many things are going to happen and wrapped around certain personalities so that it will come to the public fore, and then we'll be able to escalate the matter. And then Nigerians, there's a way that Nigerians are going to get into. You see, government works on what they call lines of least resistance. So let these things come up because we are sick and tired. Enough is enough. The time has come when God is going to use every avenue to escalate issues so that people wake up.
Yeah, Mr. Ayato, do you think, do you agree with those who say that the Betta Edu's case is not a singular, case? This has been happening for so long, and hers is really just unfortunately, has just been fortunately or unfortunately exposed. And that's why we're having this conversation. Will suspending her or maybe even sacking her, will it end the main problem that we're seeing here?
The Bible says, and it came to pass. And I say the countdown has begun. But you see, God is a strategist. He knows how to escalate issues and where to press the buttons. We can't continue the way we be. What she's done is going to annoy some people because it's like a drop in the ocean. It's like a peck of the iceberg. But we need to start somewhere. Let the countdown begin. Somebody said yesterday, and I found it very interesting, that the journey to the sky starts with the first step on the stone. You understand me? Look at where the sky is and the first step on the stone. But think about it. It's actually the truth. It might be slow as the widow bakes a cake or as fast as the ravens fly. But the fact is that let there be a start. And let Nigerians not take the foot off the pedal, because there's this general notion within government that just give it 2 weeks and it will die. Let the media sit on it. Let other aspects start to get exposed. A stage will come when the president will have no excuse, no reason. And while this is mounting, let the opposition start to build. Because where he thinks that you can't do more than a dead rat, do you understand me? Then he won't be touched. But our president is very, very, very conscious of his political interest. So there's got to be a two-way prong. Nigerians got to put pressure on him, and the opposition's got to put pressure on them. Go keep telling Nigerians, you see this, you see that. He's going to now come to tell Nigerians that, look, I'm a no-nonsense guy. I'm the guy that you want. I'm the sheriff in the town. And he's going to start to do the right things, and Nigeria will be the better for it. That's going to be the beginning of getting Nigeria sanitized. And I'm happy that the effort that she made to see the president was rebuffed. It was a good thing the president did by making sure she didn't come to her. He's going to let others also know that, man, this party guy may not work for him. So people are going to start to be careful and conscious. And that era of impunity, if we mount the pressure constantly, will start to die down. And that will be the beginning, I say it again.
Do you think that, as quickly as possible, do you think that Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo his situation might end up like that of Betta Edu? Or do you think he'll be able to weather the storm?
There are two things about his case, and I would like us to isolate these two things very clearly. Number one is, do you have an interest in this company? Number two is, did you in any way influence, by way of your position as a minister, a company in which you allegedly have interest? In the first count, he's going to smell like a rose and nothing is going to catch him, because he did present the CTC of his withdrawal from the company. He has that. So that works for him very well. And I think that people should learn to have foresight and see tomorrow he did have foresight. And secondly, I have a soft spot for him, because this thing he's doing about passports, you know, I doff my hat for him, and trust me, I will be his cheerleader. But if he does something wrong, he's going to go for it. But for this case, number one is that he was smart enough to divest all interest in that company legally and officially with an authenticated, you know, what you call the certified true copy. So any legal system you take against him is going to win. That's number one. Number two, did he influence? Let me tell you, see, you can be smart by half, you know. I can withdraw myself from, I run a company called Novon Consult, and I can easily withdraw myself from being a part of that company, but maybe my son or my uncle or my relation is taking care of my interest in that place. So officially you can't see my hand in the cookie jar, but somehow you see that the cookie is in my mouth. But you've got to open my mouth to see that it is there. So what am I trying to say? In the second part, it's neither here nor there. Because you cannot, number one, it's a formal company that has every right to bid for any job in Nigeria and get and do. So on their right, have they been getting such jobs? If you profile the company in the past and you discover that they've been doing well and they've been doing such things, so getting something like this is based on the fact that they meet all the necessary criteria for that job. If that be the case, the fact that this guy was a member of that company and now he's no longer there, should not deprive the company of being able to bid for jobs in Nigeria and get it done. Did they bid for it properly? Did they get it done properly? Was the pricing right? If all the lines, the boxes are ticked, the guy is going to go home free.
Well, Mr. Anyaitok, many some will not agree with you. They will still argue that there's conflict of interest. But at the end of the day, we can share our thoughts. And we'll just wait to see.
Let's be legal.
Yeah.
There cannot be conflict of interest in. Okay, I'm known in Nigeria, with all humility, as somebody who has broken lots of barriers in the area of housing. And that's my company. I'm now made maybe the head of a parastatal and I leave. And that company with the track record, you cannot say that company cannot bid for issues on housing and get it done. You can't say that because I was involved. So there are no. But when you look at the track record of the company, you look at the processes of procurement of that job, and you look at the performance, you look at the cost. If all these are on the right.
Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but in a few days, I'm sure we will find out what exactly will be the fate of Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you on Friday.
That guy is a nice guy. Let no politics happen to him. Thanks so much, and God bless you.
Have a good day. Now,
Same here.
it's been a number of stories we've looked at this morning. Let's take you through a quick recap of these stories. Shackles of corruption and the way forward. Osagie did speak extensively on that this morning on Breakfast Central.
And also, President Tinubu slashes travel expenditure by 60% to cut down the cost of governance, it is said.
And consultancy fee, Interior Minister Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo has been summoned. We await updates from the presidency at this point. But let's share what's coming up next on Breakfast Central.
Is the APC losing its honor of integrity?
And we'll be joined this morning by Omoyele Sowore to discuss the state of the nation. But right next, we're looking at the newspaper's front pages. Stay with us.
Cross-section of news on the continent, engaging in analytical reports. Resident doctors in Nigeria commenced a 5-day warning strike. Queues have hit the major cities in Nigeria, bringing you authentic stories as they happen. I am Adeshewa Olushoga. This is News Central.
Africa is rising. Again, we hear our sounds echo on the other side. Afrobeat and Afropop reinvented, hip life brought back to life, new energy infused into Kwaito and Kwela. Africa is balling. Every stroke, every shot, every race, we find our place at the top. Taking the helm of real power, new hopes for democracies. A breed of entrepreneurial tigers, audacious storytellers, and a promising generation raring to go. Truly, Africa is rising. And this is where the stories that define our continent live.
I love to make a difference as a journalist because when you speak to the situation or the people affected, that's when you get the full story.
And so we go all out. The protest was ongoing and it was peaceful across the plains for real-time stories.
And it was the longest bridge until the 6th of October bridge was completed in Cairo, Egypt.
Knee on knee. This is News Central.
Our first paper this morning is the Daily Trust newspaper. We'll be looking at the front pages. The story is on the front pages. Educate, EFCC grills Zenith, Jais, Providence Bank CEOs. It's a routine invitation, say bank officials. PDP demands suspension of Tunji Ojo over 438 million naira contract. Tension in Plateau as Supreme Court reverses judgment on governorship dispute. Nigeria's per capita income to reach pre-pandemic levels in 2025, according to the World Bank. Bandits place 50 million naira ransom on kidnapped FCT district head and 5 others. Niger junta releases Bazoum's son 167 days after. Kupis needs to do more, according to Diplomat. At the top of the paper, we have 3 stories, one of which is Agric Ministry not in charge of rice palliative distribution, says a spokesman. 8 motorists killed in Borno landmine explosion. That's very sad. Tinubu orders reduction of officials on federal government trips by 60%. And now to review what the papers are saying, we have public affairs analyst Olusegun Okwade. Good morning and thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning and good morning to all our viewers. Let me say compliment of the season.
Compliment of the season.
This is the first time we're saying this year.
Oh, absolutely. Happy New Year. So let's get into the paper. The PDP is calling for the sack of Olubunmi Tunji, the Minister of Interior, for his alleged involvement with the 438 million naira scam. What are your thoughts on this?
Okay, well, first and foremost, I think a proper investigation needs to be carried out into that particular issue. I listened to him on an interview he granted to your sister station on his resignation of being a director. But I prone further to look at his involvement as a stakeholder in the organization. If you know the influence of shareholders on a particular organization, you discover that the role you will have in there will not be a little thing. So I asked myself the question, fine, you are no longer a director, who sees to the day-to-day running of the organization. But are you aware that as a shareholder, your influence can actually bring some of these businesses to your organization? And that's why I feel it's really more germane. Quite disheartening. I've considered him as one of the performing ministers since we started this administration with some of his initiatives that he has brought to the Interior Ministry. But truth be told that things that are not right are not just right. If you have the opportunity to have such a contract, you should ask yourself the question that, am I actually doing what is right? So I think the organization, he claimed that the organization can bid for any contract, but you ask yourself that there is a kind of positive influence that you can bring in as shareholder, and that's why I'm questioning his personality, and knowing fully well that there is no how that will come out. Are you aware that shareholders get dividend at the end of the year? So if they don't get any business, shareholders will definitely not be smiling at the director, who are the board, who are the management team. So it's really not too good for us, and it's part of what some of us have been saying about systemic failure, because ordinarily that I consider should not apply from that ministry, knowing fully well that someone who is actually in power is just like saying a company that the president or vice president or the Senate president has stake in as shareholder is actually collecting contract from the East. So he's still rigmaroling around the same set of people, and I feel he can just step aside for now while proper investigation is being carried out, because it's not just getting the contract that is my issue. We need to look at was the work carried out? Was it worth what is actually being done? If there are other sketchy things, then he can always just step aside and we consider. And what this will pass across is that it's happening, truth be told. It's just that certain things are being revealed out now for what is not, so that it can serve as deterrent to others, that if you are in power, you have enough influence to bring contract to yourself compared to other people that may want to do something.
And do you also believe when people say that this was targeted at him because he's gaining popularity amongst Nigerians as one of the most performing ministers?
No, I will not share that sentiment. I will not share that sentiment. There are two distinct things. Do your work and don't get involved in other things that can affect your pedigree or things that you're doing. The work is, you know, I said it at the beginning, he's doing a fantastic job, you know, reforming some of those activities. So you should know very well, that once you start performing and people start sharing these accolades, even your peers start getting weary, and if care is not taken, they can set trap for you. And I think if this is part of what you will say, to say people are just, because of the accolades, trying to set him up, he entered into it freely. Because it's enough that as shareholders, there is no how you have a glimpse of that particular contract. And you can always tell them that, no, now that I'm in power, I think we can step this down and get other contracts that will be more. There are other things for them to do. What are they doing with the private sector? They can get more businesses there. Must it be with government now that you're in power? And to the tune of that amount, I'm sure is huge. So I don't share the sentiment that they are targeting him because of his performance.
I don't even know if it's business. I think it's distribution of palliatives. Is it business? The contract, was it? I thought
it's consultancy. Yeah, they say it's consultancy fee for
distribution
for
of
the
palliative.
Yeah, for the palliative. So I don't share the sentiment that they are actually targeting him. You see, it's a wake-up call when you are serving the nation, to know activities you must get involved in, so that you don't mess. For me, I'm really not too happy.
And I think
that
just for that, but you know what you've said. If you know you're going to do the work, you should know that eyebrows will raise. You know,
of course,
people. It might be something that happens in the ministry. It might be something that everybody else does. But because you've come in the spotlight for good reasons, people will look for excuses to sort of burst your bubble.
No,
so if you're doing things like that, you should come with clean hands.
Yeah, but I think what you both are describing now is, you know, if you're going to do the work, you know, you must be extra careful so you don't get involved in.
You shouldn't do that in the first place.
But the problem, you know, for me is the fact that those things even happen. And if we didn't have, I keep saying it, if we didn't have a document leak, we wouldn't know about these things. So the main problem here is that for the last couple of years, maybe 10, 15, 20 years, and maybe it's even worse now, with the hundreds of billions of naira that are given through that ministry to give us palliatives and to help with, you know, the humanitarian disaster here and there, it means that hundreds of billions of naira, you know, maybe passed through also these fraudulent means. And the only reason that we found out about this one is because a document leaked. And that's, for me, is where the main problem is.
You see, there is systemic failure. We must agree to that. We don't have an institution, and there is no structure to actually check the activities that is actually going on. I can tell you what better faced is what I will attribute to what the civil servant does averagely. This has been happening. So it's one of those bits that even when you want to question it, these people will come out to tell you that, this is happening. You are not the first person to be on this table. In fact, we have supporting documents to show that this has been happening and nothing will happen.
It's a culture.
You know, it's a culture.
Yeah.
And the culture is wrong. So if care is not taken, the people that are actually bringing that stuff has a backbone that if you don't play together, they might just eat you below the belt. So we've asked for an overlaw. I've been saying it. I, as an individual, feel that our major problem is even the civil servants because of certain things that they carry. You see, a politician will come 4 years and he will go. You, as a civil servant, understand some of the people that started with Obasanjo in 1999 are still in the system.
Yeah. But I mean, the challenge and the reason that civil servants are able to pull that off is because the government has also failed to create systems that checkmate those things. And also, they're really just taking, in my opinion, taking an example from the top. But let's move to another newspaper. The Daily Independent comes next. Outcry trails increase of aviation agency's contribution to TSA. Army to address security dark areas in Enugu, says Chief of Army Staff. Federal government supporting MSMEs with 125 billion naira, says Vice President Shatima. Okukwe, a political opportunist, goes where food is ready, says the Labour Party. Iowa remains PDP's National Secretary, court declares. Tinubu cuts overhead, number of official trips by 60%. I'm going to have you just quickly speak on two of them if we have to. We're in a rush, please. Let's quickly speak on Doyin Okupe, opportunists who goes where food is ready, and also Tinubu cutting overheads and number of officials for trips by 60%.
Yeah, on doing Okupe is not strange. Every politician in Nigeria wake up with a party in the morning, take lunch with another one, and do dinner because of lack of ideology. If you look at the politics being played in the developed world, if you're a Democrat, we know what you stand for. If you're a Republican, you know, okay, these are conservative set of people, and this is their ideology, this is what they face. But here in the morning, you discover that somebody will be part of this party because it's not relevant in the scheme of things, all in the name of, I just want to be there. So it's not new. I won't be surprised if coming back to PDP, now in the next few months, you hear it's in APC. It's where you have the goodies. People lack ideology. All of them are the top of things that are politicians now are moved from one party to the other. And it's basically because there is no ideologies. If you remember the period of UPN, NPN, you can definitely come out to say, these are what these people stand for. This is what we know them for. And you can actually, but these days is about where is the pendulum swinging. And let me just bring this in. I'm sure you read last week where a member of the G5 is already making way for 2027. That's autumn. And you ask yourself, well, he never supported Ashiwaju at the last election. But you look at the remaining four that actually gave their bid behind the president. Umahi is a minister. Weke is a minister. She is doing fantastically well. The rest people are actually doing great. He's the only one that backed out. So he started galvanizing to say, well, I'm still in PDP, but I'll work for this person. So that's the way our politician works. And it's not strange to us until we have ideology which they can actually stick to, and we know what they stand for, whether they are failing or they are gaining. The other aspect of it, of a reduction in the expense, well, I keep saying that we have good policy in this country. It's about implementation. So we want to see the implementation when the president is making his next trip, or the vice president, or even the ministers. Don't forget that so much of this will be there on paper. Several people will tell you that, no, we are not going on the bill of the government. I'm actually using my personal money. Your personal money.
They said a lot of that. A lot of that. COP28.
Of course, I was about going to that to say, no, we only sponsor 400, and the 1,400 people are actually there. So you discover that MDAs on their own, we say, no, we feel that there is relevance of our ministry going with the president. So president already has his own, and 3, 4, 5 MDAs are setting about 5 people. So add that to 25 that the president is saying. That's already 40, 50. So it's not about bringing this up. We appreciate it that it's come on paper, but I've always felt that implementation of some of these fantastic policy is the problem that we have. So that we can start saving some of these things. I keep telling individuals that the country is blessed. We have the natural resources. We have the human capital. All we lack is the political will of a leader. If you can have Lee Young that actually brought transformation, you know, to the Asian country, every aspect you want to talk about, we are blessed with it. Natural resources here and there, but the political will of managing the resources effectively is what we lack.
Before we move to the next paper, does the president even need to be on every trip? I mean, shouldn't we have representatives of government that go to negotiate these deals that the president, says he goes to negotiate?
I would say same president on some of these trips is what I would call lack of trust in some of the people he too has appointed. Maybe for a starting point, he might want to actually just do that to get things done himself. But I believe as time progresses, he might have to step down and commit those activities to other people to carry out for him. But be that it may, I think it's a right step in the right direction for us to reduce our operating costs. And the will that the government is putting to this, I think we can bring that to resuscitating some of the assets that we have that can generate revenue for us. So that as we are reducing the expense, the revenue is coming in, and the masses can have a good breath and a sign of relief, enjoying the goodies that God Almighty has actually given to us.
Okay.
All right. I wish we could take one more paper. Unfortunately, we can't. But I'm going to just take a headline from the Punch and have you react to it. EFCC seizes Edu former minister's passports. Bank MDs grilled, suspended minister barred from traveling. And also, finally, TB Joshua, SCON faults BBC report and ex-disciple knocks late prophet. I don't know if you've been able to see the report, the documentary. The BBC documentary on late TB Joshua.
Yeah.
And what your thoughts are. So there have been mixed reactions. Some are in support of it. Some are saying, why now, now that the dead is not here to defend himself? The BBC has explained that this documentary was done whilst he was alive, but unfortunately, he passed.
Yeah, for me, whether he's alive or dead, the truth is there are people too that can, defend it and come and say, no, this is not right. But I listened to the 3 episodes, and you see people very close to him coming out to give their position. I think where people should be telling us is this particular person claiming to be close to the death is really not, and is not speaking what is about. If you are affirming that that person was close to the late TB Joshua and is coming out with some of these facts as witnesses, I think it's something to go by. A lot are happening behind the scene, I must say. When it comes to religious things, there are issues that people just use that to, manage people and take them, swingle them here. And then we've had instances where the so-called men of God have swingled members. It was in this nation we heard about a man of God who organized his own kidnapping for members to raise funds and come. So those things are not just things to, but whether he's alive or dead, somebody should come and say those that are presenting those witnesses are not members of the church. I saw Daniel Amokachi, came out with his own position too, to say he went there for this, but he could not get that which he actually went for.
On a personal note, when the church started, what were your thoughts back then? And how have those thoughts also, developed over time?
For me, so many things that happened while he was alive caught me at base, in the sense that a lot of what we call sharing of this thing, it was out of place for me. When it comes to, and you ask yourself, what is the source of, coming about some of these things? And it's more of just sharing food, not actually developing areas where you build health centers, schools, except the one you have inside. So it gives me so much worries. And people should not use religion to just swingle people out of
that's
place.
happening because, of course, in some measure, the government has failed the people, so people are looking for hope and will go to any extent
I agreed with you perfectly.
Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to having you join us again.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, this is still Breakfast Central. We will go on the break, and when we come back, we'll be joined by Omoyele Showori as we look at the state of the nation. Please stay with us.
Direct response to live happenings. Factual content as truthful reporting is at the heart of our responsibility. This is the site of where the building collapse happened at about 4-5 yesterday evening. I am Bettina Unwili. This is News Central.
Welcome back to Breakfast Central. Now it's time for us to talk state of the nation. Now, just yesterday, President Bola Tinubu suspended the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Betta Edu, following controversies about financial transactions she authorized in her ministry. Mr. President also had to summon the Minister of Interior, Mr. Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo, to the presidential villa following allegations of a 438 million naira consultancy contract awarded by the embattled Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Dr. Betta Edu.
The anti-graft agency has been busy drilling Edu's predecessor, Sadiya Umar Farouk, after she finally honored the invitation of the EFCC over 37 billion naira corruption allegation against her. The EFCC's interrogators also grilled the National Social Investment Program Agency suspended National Coordinator and Chief Executive Officer Halima Shehu for long hours. Now, it's been just 8 months since the president took over office, yet it's looking like the chains of corruption, still have a strong hold over the progress of the administration. Joining us this morning to speak on this and these latest developments is human rights activist and AAC presidential candidate Omoyele Sowore. Good morning and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, and Happy New Year to our people out there.
Arguably not very surprising a turn of events that we're seeing. And I said initially that it seems like this is the way things have been done for a long time. It's a culture of corruption. It's a culture of sleaze. The only challenge that we have here is that this one leaked. Do you agree with that, or do you think that the president is just unfortunate to have these bits and pieces here and there that are tainting his image?
No, at all. This is what they came to do. They came to take care of themselves, and that's what they went to work to do. And you can tell that if you follow the trajectory of how they got here, apparently Betta Edu was reporting on her predecessor, telling on the stories of how she was stealing money, and the EFCC was busy tracking. I think that was a distraction. Why she took a page from her book of sleaze and started her own scams. But there's nothing new here. This is what these guys and these major political parties are all about. It's about taking care of themselves, taking money, sharing among themselves. So there's nothing surprising there. And what you're getting is the usual showboating. The administration needs to prove that they're not as bad as people make them feel. So you see some suspension here and there, but I don't know of anywhere within the administration or the regime that there is no sleaze going on. So these guys are a bunch of sleaze bags.
Is this indicative of the president's ability to, quote unquote, select the right people? Because that was one of the things that they argued,
There's no way to get the right people when you are not the right person.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so now let's move away from that conversation and talk about Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo and his involvement, unfortunately, in this report. He's been praised.
Why do you say it's unfortunate?
Why I say unfortunately is because of all the ministers that we've had, he's one of the ministers that has come highly praised because of the reforms he's making.
Because it's giving you passports that you paid for, that you're entitled to. No, you see, this is part of our problem as a people. There's so much mediocrity in our system, that we take for granted that these people are appointed or elected to do some jobs. And when they do it, you start praising them. This is what they're appointed to do. You have several ministries under the Interior Affairs, you have prisons, you have all kinds of problems in the country. So the minister is not actually supposed to be in charge of handing out passports. That's the job of the immigration department. And if that is happening, that is what should be happening. Nobody should be denied of their passport. So if you're getting your passport, why do you praise the minister?
Well, because what was there before, there were people there were ministers there before, and what was obtainable was mad with corruption.
Do you know that in other parts of the world, I'm not talking about even the West now, here in Africa, people get passports mailed to their houses, they apply for it online, and you get it in the mail. You get your passport in the US from the post office. I don't know who the minister or the secretary is in the US that is in charge of handing out passports. I know the postmaster in my area who does that. And if you want to get a passport and I'm not in town, they will ask me as the father of my kids to go to the embassy here to approve that they could get a passport. So It's a seamless process, and that's what it should be. That's what we pay for. But we are not even talking about security of the passport. Who are the people producing the Nigerian passport? You don't even know. It's somewhere in Singapore or, I don't know, somewhere in the Middle East or Asia. So nobody's talking about that. We're not in control and in charge of any of these things. But we're here praising a guy who is just came into office and letting passport get to you, something you desire. But we still have prisoners who are underfed, wrong people detained and imprisoned that we're not talking about. The immigration department is just one of the departments under the Internal Affairs Ministry. So the minister's hand is caught in a cookie jar, and you don't want us to talk about it because you're getting passports that you should get. That's what I'm saying that because you said it's unfortunate. There's nothing unfortunate. He knew about this. Why was it that the contract, why was it not given to you? Because they're all part of the sleaze that's going on. And this is not the first time. There was an allegation against this guy that he didn't even have NYC. He produced one, special NYC discharge certificate. I don't have one, and I can't produce one, but I completed my NYC years ago. But they said he diverted money that was meant for southern part of Ondo State to his own part of the state. Nobody is asking about that. They're talking about, oh, he came, he's doing passports. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the resources of the country that's being looted by these people. And sometimes I think they deliberately get us involved in this whole conversation so that we are distracted from serious socio-political issues in the country. So every regime that comes around, we fire somebody at the beginning of the regime and make it look as if, they call them fall guys. And then you make it look as if they are serious, and then you forget about the real issues. And before you know it, they keep, producing these distractions from time to time.
So are you saying that if a person comes into office or an administration comes into office and things were done wrongfully before, and I completely agree with you that the picture you have painted is what ought to be, but what is a far cry from what ought to be. So are you saying that when an administration comes in or a person comes in and they're doing the work to return things to what ought to be, we shouldn't applaud them?
No, I'm saying that before they came into office, they actually were the ones who caused the problem. The political party that created the problem is this party. The APC has been in power for how many years? 8 years before now. Olubunmi Ojo himself was in the National Assembly. So what is new? These guys are the same guys, the same network of people, the same manpower. So they recruit from that pool. That's where they got all these Betty, Betta and Olubunmi from. They're all part of the APC machinery. This is not the first. You are just hearing about them now because, they're probably a little bit overexposed. This is what they do. Passing money and sharing money. That's what they do in National Assembly. That's what they do at the state levels. That's what they do everywhere. But, they just got overexposed. That's why somebody is flying from Abuja to Lokoja. They must have forgotten that there's no airport there. But that's the culture of impunity. People get so caught up in it, they get away with so much that at times they even forget the minutiae of what is wrong, Otherwise, you would at least remember that you can't fly from Abuja to Lokoja. Yeah. Right. Because there's no airport there. Except if there's a seaplane. But then where did it take off from Abuja, to land in the confluence there? But this is what they do, and that's why I'm saying getting things right is not this way. Because this is what we pay for as taxpayers. That's why people get elected and appointed into office. Not to come and show off, is to do things right. And they know they're the ones who caused the problem. So probably that was the reason why they were able to convince people that they are doing the right things, because they caused the problem in the first place. They're the ones who got your passport messed up in such a way that you can't get it. And then they come around and offer a few passports.
Is your argument then that there's nothing to commend,
nothing,
even with the suspension of Betta Edu,
it's a revolving door. You remove a Betta Edu, there's going to be a better who can still better that will come in. This is what Buhari did when he came into office. The whole initial gara, as we call it. Oh, this person has been. There was even at that point they used to say that Buhari had body language. He didn't need to speak, and things were falling in place. And then suddenly, look at what the body language turned Nigeria into. So there's always an excuse from us as a people to just make things not work the way they should. Instead of holding people's feet to fire, we start praising little things that don't matter.
Yeah, it might be
not
trauma
governance.
response, you know, from the average Nigerian. Because,
No,
you know,
it's not. What is an average Nigerian looking for? You know, you talk about passport. How many Nigerians travel? You know, how many people need passport? We have 200 million people. We are talking about maybe a few million people who apply to get passports, who can afford to travel. What about the 190 million more who are living on $1 per day? Why are we not talking about that? How about their schools, their roads? I mean, don't you see what is going on? There are people who are stuck in their villages as we speak because they can't afford to come back after Christmas and New Year's. And we are here talking about people who are sharing money and who are still sharing money as we speak. They're going to be sharing money, this money, to the NNPC, customs, immigration. They're going to be stealing money at the central bank this money. There's going to be money moving around. So they are happy that you are distracted, right? That, oh, there's one beta Edu that's just been suspended and everybody's happy about it. Like I said, there are thousands of beta Edus there. And the big kahuna himself, this is what they used to do in Lagos before they moved to Abuja.
It's a little scary.
Sharing money.
And this is a little scary. And I probably would like to know what, if you were in that position, you know, what would be the first steps to tackle a situation like this? The government, of course, you know, cannot be everywhere at the same time.
So let me tell you a secret on how what is happening now is happening. When the Tinubu regime came to power, they enacted a supplementary budget.
Yes.
Huge amount of money was allocated. They must finish that money by March. You understand? So they must finish that money by March. It is that money that's sharing now that got everybody entangled now. And they have a new budget that's coming in. So that money is what they're trying to finish. Are you getting my point? So nobody's talking about this. They must exhaust their supplementary budget. But why set up a supplementary budget only to be stolen? It's what I would have done as a regime. And I would not have allowed this kind of abuse to take place because, as I always say, before we go to enforcement, we ought to have primary prevention in place. Why should a minister have the power to allocate money to a private account? If that system is still there where you can just take money and hand out to someone, then you are not in government. I mean, you're just in power.
So what you're saying is that you wouldn't have gone for the supplementary budget?
What was the need for a supplementary budget when there was, before you came to office, there was already a budget covering 2023. And that budget had not been exhausted. But you came in and put a supplementary budget in place. Part of it was scandalous. You had to go and repair Dodam barracks, buy a yacht. And they said it without beating an eye that they already bought the yacht on credit. Okay. And I was saying, I've never seen Tinubu inside a cane or talk less of being in a yacht. Why are you buying a yacht? But it was, when they started the supplementary budget, they had planned what you saw now. And that's why I'm saying, the part you saw about Betu Edu and Tunde, that's probably the smallest part of it. The big item budgets with National Assembly that recently increased the budget by themselves by several billions, if not trillions. This list is going on as we speak. It hasn't stopped. It's not like after removing Edu, everybody removed their hands from that cookie jar. Everybody's still stealing.
Okay.
Yes.
They did give an explanation about the presidential yacht and how, you know, it had already been purchased, but it wasn't a yacht in the sense of it being a yacht, but, you know, had other functions. We'll come back to that. Let's talk about now cutting the cost of governance.
Yes.
Would you consider the president slicing travel expenditure by 60% as a step in the right direction?
What is 60% is the question the media ought to be asking.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
the Vanguard reported about 15 billion for 2024. I think it was, I'm not sure whether it was the Punch or so, or the Cable that reported about, you know, 7 billion or so.
Okay.
So they are conflicting figures, but
exactly.
You know, it runs into billions.
So nobody knows what it is. This is part of what I say is distraction, and people don't ask questions. So when you say 60%, are you cutting the number of people that travel?
Yeah, that's one.
And how many usually should travel?
Yeah, that's what we do not have a clear picture on.
If you are going to the United Nations, for instance, and you take 600 people with you, and you have cut it by 60%, how many people are those? You know, you're still taking with you people who have no business going to the United Nations. So how does that help you? What if you caught it on the surface and you're going to hide it somewhere else, like you did with is it COP 25?
Yeah. 28.
Yes, 28.
Yeah.
You know, you had ministries, departments of government still bringing in people who have definitely nothing to do but to go and collect ESTA codes. So these things are not as clear as they should be. And that's why the media has a role to ask these questions and to keep an eye on them.
I'm hoping that we can actually get across to Ajurin Gelale and he'll be willing to grant us an interview. But let's take a look at his explanation of what exactly is being cut when we refer to travel expenditure being cut by 60%.
It will be conducted in the following fashion. 1, the official trips that will be undertaken within the country, that is when Mr. President or the Vice President travels to any state within the country, the massive bills that accrued due to allowances and ESTA code for security detail coming from Abuja, going and traveling into those states, will be massively cut due to the directive of the President that the security outfits within states, whether it be police, DSS, or branches of the military, will frontline his protective detail when he travels to those states. Additionally, when any international travel is being approved, the following limits have been placed on all ministers of the Federation. 4 members of their staff, appointees and the like, will be allowed to travel with a minister on an official trip. For heads of agency, that will be limited to 2 members of staff allowed to travel on an official trip. Furthermore, the numbers that the President has now approved for official travel with him that will apply to his principal staff are as follows. On international trips, the President has directed that no more than 20 individuals be allowed to travel with him. That number will be cut down to 5 in the case of the First Lady. 20 for the President, 5 for the First Lady. Additionally, the number in the entourage on official international trips for the Vice President will be cut to 5. The number that will be limited, the number that will be placed as a limit on the wife of the Vice President is also 5. In terms of local trips, the President has approved a new limit of 25 members of staff.
All right. During Galali, they're breaking down the adjustments to the President's travel team and how, he says it's been cut down by 60%. I just want to remind everyone of the convoy that escorted the President to the mosque 2 Fridays ago, I think.
There's another Friday this week.
Yes. Exactly. And that was a convoy of, a billion SUVs. So I just to quickly mention that. Mr. Shore, so are you impressed with this?
No, not at all. So what you don't know, but some of us know, is that when the President is traveling anywhere, he takes with him governors, ministers. He doesn't have control over how many people the governors take with him. So this is how these guys operate. But they also have an advanced team of over 40 people sometimes that will go secure hotels, scan areas, security people. All these people need to be eliminated. Any country where you have an embassy shouldn't need an advanced team. And when they say 4 people need to travel with the minister, why? Why do you need 4 people? Can't the minister travel by himself? When he wasn't minister, he was traveling by himself. Why can't he now travel by himself? But it's beyond just the president. It's a culture of waste in the country. Ask yourself, how many policemen, DSS, soldiers are attached to a governor? Every governor has over 200 of these guys. And all of them, when they're traveling, somehow must be placed on the trip, whether they're traveling or not. It's all about how to steal, how to share resources. And until these things are comprehensively addressed, you're not going to get, all these ones are just, this is what they told Ngali to go and say. He doesn't know any better. You get my point. And when he's done saying it, the people who are traveling, or some of them who have traveled, have not even come back. Do you know that under this regime, there are ministers in the regime who are serving as coppers?
NYC coppers?
Yes.
Can you share something?
What's her name? Musawa is a copper. As a minister of youth, who has been based in the UK ever since the regime started, somebody is paying for her bills to stay there. We all just came back from the Ondo State scandals, right? Okay. When we were saying that these guys were lying, that Akeredolu wasn't coming back, the media was presenting, some media, not all of it, and I give the credit to you guys, was presenting a different, angle, that the man was recovering, is on his way back, the wife was meeting with House of Assembly members. But we kept saying that, with due respect, based on what we know, this guy is not well enough to return back to power. Handover. Now, that has been resolved, naturally. So when we are telling you these things, these are things we know. Now, what you're hearing or what they're presenting is different from what will happen even as soon as the press conference is over. The president doesn't have control over these people. It's part of a power and money sharing process to travel with the president, so that you can come and get us. He mentioned ESTA. This is all about ESTA codes, and by the next trip, they have planned it, and more people will travel.
Yeah, but isn't it possible that whoever is in charge of the president's itinerary, would then be able to cut down on the number of...
Because it's not only one person that's in charge. It's various interests, cabals.
Oh, wow. Well, that's a different thing. And there's also the office of the First Lady there that is...
Exactly. Why do we have an office of the First Lady when it's not even constitutional? So people are speaking as if the First Lady has a right to travel. Don't forget that there's a First Lady, there's a first son, and there's a first daughter in the Tinubu regime. All of them have their offices, and you can't cut their travel, their travel team.
Well,
this is the first president to have all of that, And I heard he has a first in-law too.
Really? Are these confirmed?
Of course.
That they are all being paid?
Is it not confirmed that there's a first daughter, there's a first son, Sheyi, and the Yaloja of Lagos, and the husband of one of the daughters they all have offices in Abuja.
Well, that's arguable. Because
it's not arguable. I'm talking to you based on what I know.
All right.
Like I keep reminding you guys, I'm a journalist too, even though I might have come through the back door because I didn't train as a journalist, but as you can respect some of these opinions because they're fact-based.
And I'm glad that you mentioned you're a journalist because I'm sure that can help with the next question. It's impossible for us to have conversations about the state of the nation without talking insecurity.
Yeah.
We've been hearing of kidnap cases on the increase in Abuja, and there have been unconfirmed reports, I cannot confirm them, of some people saying that they've seen bodies, headless bodies on the express around Ogun State. I've seen a number of comments like that on social media. I cannot confirm them. I don't know if you can. So talk to us about the state of insecurity in Nigeria and what the way forward.
This is the reason why I said some of these issues you're saying are just distractions. Because there are serious social political issues. The people who are behind insecurity are like fully backed in business. Even in our state, Ondo States, you read about how the Amotekun that they set up has been overwhelmed. And yes, there's more kidnapping now. Kidnapping has become a daily occurrence in different parts of the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. And you're hearing about more armed robberies happening, to even student hostels across the country. And nobody's talking about it. So we're talking about these issues because that's what they throw at you so that they can hide the main issues affecting. So if you are seeing headless bodies, that's because more and more of these guys have been emboldened. Because I guess the problem of security has been abandoned to share money and to talk about how they're sharing money. It's serious, and nothing has changed. That I think things are getting worse on the security side.
Finally,
we're still talking about Plateau State, where over 200 people were killed, and it's not as if the killings have stopped. There's still a lot of skirmishes going on. They're taking over villages, renaming them, and nobody's talking about this.
Finally, I saw you did a video, you posted a video on Doyo Okokwe and the Labour Party in general. You called it a place for internally displaced politicians. There's still millions of people who have faith in Labour Party, looking forward to 2027, hoping that, of course, they can pull the same energy again. Do you think it's likely to happen again?
I'm not in the Labour Party. The reason I responded that way was because Doyin Okupe resigned.
Yeah.
And I recall Doyin Okupe calling me to support the Labour Party. And I was asking myself, if I had respected him enough to join the Labour Party, would it mean that I'll be following him now to his next destination? And I've always described the Labour Party as an Airbnb, short renter. Everybody, they use it in Ondo State before to bring Mimiko into office. After a while, he abandoned and went back to PDP. It's usually where the PDP and APC people go to, where they are disgruntled. And you look at the Labour Party now, and all the elected officials, they are the first set of people to collect the 160 million naira SUV. So what is it? They just use the party to get whatever they want, and they abandon the party. The video that I shared was before even the Labour Party Peter Obi went to Labour Party, because I had always known that is what the Labour Party is all about. And I said, Doyin Okupe has proven us right. So what I'm saying is that all of them are the same. Labour Party, APC, PDP, they call them APC, PDP, LP. AAC is different, yes. AAC would never, if we had anybody in National Assembly, would never have accepted the 160 million. If anybody did, we would have expelled the person from our party. So that's not our ideology.
So in all of this, as quickly as possible, in 30 seconds, is there nothing to be excited about? To say, okay, at least this is the one ray of hope in this administration.
This is January. If you're excited about anything, tell it to the public.
Well, I'm the one asking the question.
Okay, we can assume the role of journalists now. Let's ask ourselves a question since we're closing the show.
Well,
there's nothing to be excited about. The economy is in shambles. The value of the currency is in shambles. We're talking about insecurity. People have woken up to the reality that nothing has changed. Things have gotten worse. And we're not making it up. This is the daily reality that our people are facing. So you are in a country where minimum wage is still 30,000 naira.
Oh, there's conversations about increasing that. Where we're going to fund it, we're not sure. And,
no, don't let anybody argue about funding. There's more than enough, based on what we are even hearing about how they are sharing money. Doesn't it surprise you that somebody can walk away with 37 billion, there's another 50 billion somewhere? The former Akada General of Nigeria stole 109 billion.
We haven't heard much about that.
Yes. He was detained briefly, and now he's some high-ranking traditional ruler in the north. So there's more than enough to go around, but there's no way you can fulfill the needs of the greedy. It's not possible.
Mr. Omoyele Sowore, it's always a delight to have you. Thank you very much for joining us to discuss the state of the nation. There's so much to talk about. We'd like you to share your thoughts with us on any of the conversations we've shared so far. If you agree, if you disagree, your thoughts are welcome. News Central TV is the handle on all social media platforms. We'll go on a very quick break, and when we come back, we'll be wrapping things up. Oh, yeah. Okay, we've come down to the end of the show. Let's share with you what's happening next on News Central as we wrap up.
Your flight will be ready shortly, ma'am.
Thank you. Breakfast in Paris. Lunch in London. This could be you. And there's more. Hey, Mai, tell them more.
Of course. Now this is what I call a win. And this could be you too in the Globe Festival of Joy promo.
By recharging 50,000 naira or more within a month, you could be among our 100 winners who will win business class tickets from Lagos to Paris to London. If you recharge 100,000 naira or more in a month, you could be one of the many winners of a premium bungalow in Nigeria. The more you recharge, the more your chances to win.
How was your flight?
Delicious.
Glow Unlimited.
Africa is rising. Again,
we hear our sounds echo on the other side. Afrobeat and Afropop reinvented, hip life brought back to life, new energy infused into Kwaito and Kwela. Africa is balling. Every stroke, every shot, every race, we find our place at the top. Taking the helm of real power, new hopes for democracies. A breed of entrepreneurial tigers, audacious storytellers, and a promising generation raring to go. Truly, Africa is rising. And this is where the stories that define our continent live.
It's not just news to us. It's our voice and our story. It's our